Okay, so we're back and today we're going to start lesson 2. I think it's 8. Okay, so lesson 2.8, today we're going to be multiplying radicals. Yesterday we looked at how to add and subtract these radicals. So for the warm-up, it says to simplify by adding or subtracting a radical expression. So below, we see that let's extend our understanding. And so if I look at what I'm adding and subtracting below, I got 2 times the square root of 3 minus 5 times the square root of 7 plus 4 times the square root of 3 minus 9 times the square root of 7. Well, quite naturally, you see you can't simplify these radicals anymore, but I see, well, I can combine some of these and some of these I can't. So automatically, I see I can combine the 2 times the square root of 3 and 4 times the square root of 3. So if I were to add them together, okay, or combine them together, because they're like terms, okay, in a sense, I would get 6 times the square root of 3. All right, and then I also see where I can combine -5 times the square root of 7 and -9 times the square root of 7, giving me a -14 times the square root of 7. And when I get here, I have to stop because I notice that I cannot go further because I can't combine these together because guess what? The number under the radical is not the same. I can't simplify anymore, so I have to stop here. All right, second one, it says simplify this expression. Well, looking at these radicals here, I see automatically that these expressions are simplified already, so I can combine -5 times the square root of 3 and 8 times the square root of 13. Sorry, that's -5 times the square root of 13 and a +8 times the square root of 13. So when I combine them together, I should get a +3 times the square root of 13. All right, and then this -4 times the square root of 6 doesn't combine with anything, so I'm just going to tag it along at the end right here. All right, next one, it says express 2x to the 1/2 power in radical form. So remember, if I'm writing this in radical form, I have to rewrite this as a radical. And so let me highlight this over here so that you guys can see it a little bit better, because it does look a little kind of just small. So I have the 2x and this raised to the 1/2 power. If I want to write this as a radical, remember this is my index number and this is my exponent. So that means I'm going to write my radical, which is the square root, and that means the 2 is my index number. Okay, so this would be my index number, and the 1 would be my exponent, but more importantly, all of this would be under the radical because they're all in parentheses. All right, looking at number 2, we have this time 2x to the 1/2 power, where this time the only thing that's being affected by the 1/2 is the x. So that means that the 2 will stay on the outside, and so that's going to be times the radical. Okay, and x is going to go underneath. You have your 2 in the denominator, so that means that 2 is going to be your index number. So I'm going to write that small 2, and my exponent is 1. Okay, and I'm not going to show that my exponent there, but you guys know that it's 1. And the last one here, it looks like 4 times the cube root of xy. So quite naturally, you see that the 4 is by itself. So let me show the 4 is by itself. So the 4 is by itself, but I'm going to open parentheses because now I need to take what's under the radical, and that leaves the x and y. And both of these are to the first power, so therefore they're going to be raised to the 1/3 power, because this right here, remember, it is now in our denominator and the exponent is 1, which goes in our numerator. All right, so Okay, so today we're going to look at multiplying radicals. Now, the way that we multiply radicals is that when I'm multiplying a radical, I have to ensure, let's pick a pretty color here. Okay, I have to ensure that I take my numbers, if I have numbers on the outside, and I'm going to multiply those numbers that's on the outside together, okay? And then I'm going to multiply those numbers on the inside together, all right? But in order to do that, we got to make sure that the index numbers, okay? So the index numbers, index, and I'm sure I spelled that wrong, so that's INDEX, number has to be the same, okay? All right, so in order for me to multiply these, the index numbers have to be the same. And so when I multiply, I can get, well, a times b, and then times the square root of x times y. So it's like the outside multiplied together by each other and the inside multiplied by each other. All right, so let's look at an example here. Pick a purple. That's so pretty. All right, so it says to simplify by multiplying, and quite naturally, you should know that there's a 1 out here and a 1 out here, so therefore 1 times 1 just makes 1. Let me show you. There's 1 here and 1 here, but I'm not going to show the 2 1s there, but you should know that. So instead of multiplying numbers that's on the outside, because both of these has 1s on the outside, I'm just going to focus on multiplying the numbers that's in the inside of the radicals. I see that the index numbers are the same because they're both 2s. So therefore, I can take the square root of 4 times 4, which is going to give me 16. Okay, so basically, I just rewrote, let me rewrite this. Okay, so I just took the whole square root and I just combined them together. So that's the square root of 4 times 4, which is just equal to the square root of 16. And then you can break that down, but of course you guys know that 16 is a perfect square, so this is just equivalent to 4, and we simplified it. Okay, let's look at some more examples here. All right, so now we want to simplify this. All right, so how do we simplify? Well, we multiply the numbers on the outside to the outside and the numbers on the inside to the inside. Quite naturally, there's no numbers there, so the numbers there, you should know they are 1. So I just multiply the 3 and 27. Well, if I didn't know what 3 times 27 was, well, let me rewrite this. Because the index numbers are the same, I'm going to rewrite this as 3 times 27. So it's the square root of 3 times 27. Well, I want to simplify that. So if I go here, you know, you can multiply 3 and 27 together, or you can just finish simplifying it. All right, so I'm going to finish simplifying it, so you'll see what I mean. So 3 times, now I'm going to break 27 down, and so I'm going to go here, y equals, because I'm looking for factors of 28, because I know that 27, sorry, I know that 27 can be broken down some more. So I'm looking for factors of 27. Oh, I see a 9. I know 9 is a perfect square. So therefore, I see I can put in there a 3 times a 9. And so now I know that I can break the 9 down this time. So that becomes the square root of 3 times. Now I'm messing with the 9, which is 3 times 3. And so in order to simplify this more, I can pull my numbers out in pairs. And so you see I have 2 pairs. I have 1 pair of 3. So that means I can pull out 1 3. And then I also have another 3. So that means I can pull another 3 out. So therefore, we're left with nothing under the radical. It's pretty colored purple. All right, so therefore nothing is left under the radical. So therefore this is equivalent to 9. So when you multiply this, this is just equivalent to 9. Okay, and if you wanted to check this in a calculator, you could. So if you put in let's say the square root of 3 times the square root of 27. Oh, I did that wrong. Okay, let me start over. The square root of 3, press that to tab over, times the square root of 27. You should just get 9 here, in which we got there. All right, let's keep it moving. Let's look at some more examples here. All right, so now it says how to multiply radicals by distributing. So there we go, that distributing thing that we've kind of done before. So how do I distribute? That means that I have inside parentheses, I'm trying to multiply the square root of 2 by everything in there. So that means if I distribute that 2, I have to multiply the square root of 2 by the square root of 2. Well, when I multiply the square root of 2 by the square root of 2, I should get the square root of 4. Now I also have to multiply, purple so pretty, I would so have to multiply the square root of 2 times -3. Now when you multiply those together, you'll notice that the 3 is not under a square root. So that means that 3 is multiplying by the one that's on the outside of that square root that you don't see. Okay, so therefore this becomes -3 times the square root of 2. Now, can I simplify this any further? Possibly. You know why it's possible? Because it looks like I can break down or I can simplify a little bit more the square root of 4. So if I simplify the square root of 4, I notice that this would break down into the square root of 2 times 2, which is a pair of 2's. I can pull a 2 out. So therefore the square root of 4 is just 2. So now I tag this along, okay, which is -3 times the square root of 2. Now, this is it. I can't do nothing else. They're both simplified, and I'm just finished. So this would be what my final answer will look like. If I were to put this in my calculator, it would probably be some type of a decimal number. All right, let's look at some more examples. All right, so here we are. We're still distributing, but this time, if you notice here, we got -3 times the square root of 12. You don't throw out what you already remember about multiplying radicals. Okay, so I'm multiplying these radicals. That means I multiply the numbers on the outside to the numbers on the outside. And since they have the same index, the numbers on the inside to the numbers on the inside. It's the same thing every single time. So the numbers on the outside is -3 and 5. When you multiply them together, you're going to get -15. Okay, if you didn't know that, then you can come over to your calculator and just put it in your calculator, -3 times 5. And it's going to give you -15. That's what go here. Then what goes under the radical is 12 times 3. Now, notice I didn't multiply them together because I could possibly have to simplify them a little bit more. All right, so now, since I took care of the first one, now I have to multiply that -3 times the square root of 12 by -4 times the square root of 6. Now, when you're multiplying them, same thing. Numbers on the outside, multiply the numbers on the outside to the numbers on the inside, multiply the numbers on the inside to the numbers on the inside. So therefore, you're going to multiply -3 times -4. All right, now if I didn't know what that was, I'm just going to go to my calculator, -3 times -4. And guess what? I get a +12. So I'm going to put plus 12, and then I multiply the numbers from the inside of the radical to the number inside the radical. So I'm just going to write the square root of 12 times 6. And the reason I didn't multiply them out is because I'm probably going to have to break them down anyway. So since it's kind of, already semi-done for me, let's see what happens. So right now, I cannot really add these together because their radicands, the number under the radical, is not the same right now. So I'm going to try to simplify the negative 15 times the square root of 12 times 3. So when I try to simplify that, I know that I can go ahead and bring the negative 15 down. But I can rewrite 12 as just 3 times 4. That was the first number that popped in my head, and times 3. All right, so I see that I can continue to break this down by 15 times 3 times 2 times 2 times 3. And so look here, you can see that you have a pair of 2's, and then you also have a pair of 3's. So what does this mean? I can pull a 3 out there, and I could also pull a 2 out there. And so when you pull all those numbers out there, you got now you have a negative 15. You have a negative 15. Negative 15 times a positive 3 times a positive 2. All right, if you don't know what that is, go to your calculator and multiply them. Okay, at this point, there's nothing left under the radical, so the radical goes away. So I'm going to put negative 15 times 3 times 2, and then I get a negative 90. So when I simplify this all the way, I get just a negative 90. That should be negative 90. I want to circle that. All right, so now when I go over here, I need to simplify. Well, this 12 is going to come down. So the 12 is on the outside. All right, simplify stuff on the inside. I see there's a 6 there already, so I know I'm going to use 2 times 6 times 6. Okay, and that 6 came from where I broke the 12 down. So already I see that I have a pair of 6's, so that means I can pull a 6 out. And the 2 doesn't have a pair, so that means it have to stay in there. So when you pull the 6 out, you get 12 times 6 times the square root of 2, because that 2 stays in there. Well, if I don't know what 12 times 6 is, I just come to my calculator, plug that in, and so you get 72 times the square root of 2. And so you cannot forget, because what I've done is all I did was just kind of work them separate, but the whole time they're still being added together. Okay, regardless of the work that I do, these two are still being added together. Okay, so what you have finally is that negative 90 plus 72 times the square root of 2. Well, I can't do anything else with it. I can't add them together because the number under the radical is not the same. Plus, this one doesn't even have a radical, so you cannot combine them together, so therefore this would be simplified. All right, so let's look at another example. Still here, we are distributing. So when I distribute, I have to remember multiply the inside to the inside. Let's see, multiply the inside to the inside and the outside to the outside. So in this case, this one doesn't have an inside because there's no radical attached. So therefore, I can just multiply the whole numbers. So this becomes a positive 10 times the square root of 7. Okay. And then you have to multiply this. This becomes, you got 2 radicals, so it becomes positive. So put a plus. And notice how I didn't put a plus here, because this is kind of like on the outside, but when you're trying to separate two different things, I'm either going to put a minus or a plus there. Okay, so this becomes a positive 6 times the square root of basically 7 times 7. And so now you can see that you can't simplify this first one here anymore because 7 is already simplified enough. The only thing you can do is continue to bring it down. But here you can, on this second one, you can simplify it by pulling out a 7 because you have a pair of 7s. So therefore, I'm still going to bring this down. So this is still 10 square roots of 7, and that is plus, well, 6 times 7, if you don't know it, 6 times 7 in your calculator, not 77. Let's delete one. All right, so 6 times 7 is going to give us 42. So over here, I should get plus 42. Well, I can't do anything else with that because I can't combine them together. So this is simplified as I can get. All right, let's look at another example. All right, so here, look at this. It doesn't look like the last examples that we did. So here, let's try, we're going to have to end up fulling this, okay? And what I mean by fulling, I got to make sure that I multiply this 1 by every single thing there. So 1 times 1 is 1. Okay, that's a 1. And then I got to multiply the 1 times the square root of 5, which is just plus the square root of 5. And now I got to switch over and I got to multiply negative square roots of 5. Okay, let's get a color that works. Okay, negative square roots of 5 by everything there. So I'm going to get minus the square root of 5. And then I got to multiply by this one. So that's going to give me a minus the square root of, if I want to go ahead and combine them together, I could, but I'm just going to leave them written as this because I'm probably going to have to realize that I'm going to have to simplify them again. Now, this is what I have. I'm going to try to combine like terms. Well, I have a positive square root of 5 and a negative square root of 5. Well, you should see that they're going to cancel each other out, okay? So even if I put that in my calculator, they're opposites of each other. They're going to always make 0, okay? Let me show you in the calculator. So I'm going to put a positive square roots of 5 and plus, let's clear that out, square roots of 5 minus the square root of 5. And they're like complete opposites of each other, so they're going to make 0, so that's why they cancel out. So you can see that you're now left with just 1 minus the square root of 5 times 5, which you see that you can continue to simplify this a little bit more. So therefore I can pull out a 5, okay? Pull the 5 out of the radical. So you got 1 minus 5, okay? The radical disappears because there's nothing else. Well, 1 minus 5 is just going to equal negative 4. And so you can't go any further than that. So therefore you have simplified as much as you can. All right, let's look at another example. Still simplifying by multiplying. So I'm going to multiply, distribute, okay, everything. So I'm going to get 9 times the square root of 6 times 6, okay? So I'm going to just leave them written as factors, just in case if I have to simplify some more. All right, let me get that blue back. Okay, then I have to also do the square root of 3 times 6 times 6, okay? And that's going to give me a positive 18 times the square root of 6. All right, now I need to switch because now this time I have to multiply the negative 6 by everything. All right, so that's going to be negative 18 square roots of 6. All right, and you guys check my math and make sure I'm doing this right. And then this right here will be a negative 36. All right, so now I'm trying to simplify this more. Well, if you do the math, you'll see that you can add these together, okay, because they both have the same number under the radical. But they're basically going to just cancel out because they're opposite. One is positive and one is negative. And you guys can try me on that. All right, so I have 9 times the square root of 6 times 6 minus 36. Well, now what can I do? Oh, yeah, I can continue to simplify this. I got a pair of 6's. I can pull a 6 out. So therefore, over here, I have 9 times 6. Okay, and then minus 36 here. Well, let me continue to work my way down. So when I multiply 9 times 6, well, if you don't know what 9 times 6 is, let's see. Well, sometimes this pen acts up. Okay, so if you don't know what 9 times 6 is, you can come over to your calculator and put 9 times 6, hit enter, it's 54. So instead of writing 9 times 6, I'm just going to write 54. Okay, so that's 54 minus 36. Well, now you see I can go ahead and simplify that. Well, if I didn't know, I'm just going to put 54 minus 36 in my calculator, and I should get 18. Okay, and I see that this all simplifies down to 18. All right. So now you guys are going to try some on your own just to see if you really understand how to multiply these radicals.